Good morning, everybody. We are on to chapter 11 and 12 of Son of the Beaver. One morning, Matt laid his sticks in a row. 7 sticks, each with 7 notches. That meant it was well into August. The silk tassels were glistening on the corn stalks. The hard green pumpkins nestling underneath the stalks were rounding out and taking on a coating of orange. It was time for his father to be coming. At any moment, he might look out and see him walking into the clearing, bringing his mother and Sarah and a new baby. It was strange to think there was a member of the family he had never seen. Was it a boy or a girl? It would be a fine thing to have them sitting around the table again. He hoped his mother would take over the reading lessons, which were going badly. Etienne still came almost every day. Though there was no longer any need for him to bring meat or fish, Matt could not make out why the Indian kept coming, since he made it so plain that he disliked the lessons. So often Etienne made him feel uncomfortable and ridiculous, but he had to admit that on the days when Etienne did not come, the hours went by slowly. Often Etienne seemed in no hurry to leave when the morning lessons were over. "Look, see if we catch rabbit," he might suggest, and together they would go check out the snares, or they would tramp along the creek to a good spot for fishing. Etienne seemed to have plenty of time on his hands. Sometimes he would just hang around and watch Matt do the chores. He would stand at the edge of the corn patch and look on while Matt pulled up weeds. "Squaw work," he commented once. Matt flushed. "We think it's man's work," he retorted. Etienne said nothing. He did not offer to help, and after a time he wandered off without saying goodbye. It must be mighty pleasant, Matt thought to himself, to just hunt and fish all day long and not have to do any work. That wasn't his father's way, and it would never be his. The work was always waiting to be done, but if he got the corn patch cleared and the wood chopped today, he could go fishing with Etienne tomorrow, if Etienne invited him. Sometimes Etienne brought an old dog with him. It was the sorriest looking hound Matt had ever seen, with a coat of coarse brown hair and a mangy tail and whitish patches on its face that gave it a clownish look. Its long, pointed nose was misshapen with bumps and bristles. By the looks of its ears, it had survived many battles. The instant it spied Matt, a ridge of hair went straight up on its back, and it let out a mean growl. Etienne cuffed it sharply, and after that it was quiet, but it watched the white stranger with wary eyes and kept its distance. Matt tried not to show his own distrust. "What's his name?" he asked politely. Etienne shrugged. "No name. Arimus dog." "If he doesn't have a name, how does he come when you call?" "Him my dog, him come." As though he knew what Etienne had said, the scruffy tail began to weave back and forth. "'Piz what?" Etienne said. "Good for nothing. No good for hunt. No sense. Him fight anything. Bear, moose." There was no mistaking the pride in Etienne's voice. "What's wrong with his nose?" "Him fight anything. Ches kagwa. What man call? Needles all over." "Oh, a porcupine. Golly, that must have hurt." "Pull out mini needle. Some very deep. Not come out. Dog not feel now." Maybe not, Matt thought, but he doubted those quills had improved the dog's disposition. He didn't fancy this dog of Etienne's. During the lesson, the dog prowled about outside the cabin and finally thumped down on the path to bite and scratch at fleas. When Etienne came out, the dog leaped up, prancing and yapping, as though Etienne had been gone for days. Matt thought a little better of him for that. It minded him how his father's dog had made a fuss every time his father came home. The old hound must about wagged its tail off when his father came back from Maine. Fact was, Matt was a little jealous of Etienne. A dog would be mighty fine company here in the woods, no matter how scrawny it looked. But not this one. No matter how often the dog came with Etienne, he never let Matt touch him, nor did Matt like him any better. He was certainly no good at hunting. When the two boys walked through the woods, the dog zigzagged ahead, sending squirrels racing up trees, jays chattering, and ruining any chance of a catch. Matt wondered why Etienne wanted him along. Etienne didn't pay him any mind except to shout at him or cuff him when he was too noisy. But for all his show of indifference, it was plain to Matt that Etienne thought a sight of that dog. Etienne had not brought the dog with him the day he led Matt a long distance into a part of the forest Matt had never seen. Following after him, Matt began to feel uneasy. If Etienne should take himself off suddenly, as he had a way of doing, Matt was not sure he could find his way back to the cabin. It occurred to him that Etienne knew this, that perhaps Etienne had brought him so far just to show him how helpless he really was, how all the woods in the white man's book were no use to him in the woods. Yet he did not think this would happen. For some reason he could not explain to himself. He trusted Etienne. He didn't really like him. When the Indian got this disdainful look in his eyes, Matt hated him. But somehow, as they had sat side by side, day after day, doing the lessons that neither of them wanted to do, something had changed. Perhaps it had been Robinson Crusoe, or the tramping through the woods together. They didn't like each other, but they were no longer enemies. When they came upon a row of short tree stumps, birch and aspen cut off close to the ground, Matt's heart gave a leap. Were there settlers nearby? Or Indians? There was no proper clearing. Then he noticed that whoever cut the trees had left jagged points on each one. No axe could cut a tree that way. He could see marks where the trees had been dragged along the ground. In a few steps, the boys came out on a bank of an unfamiliar creek. There Matt saw what had happened to those trees. They had been piled in a mound right over the water, from one bank to the other. Water trickled through them in tiny cascades. Behind the piled-up branches, a small pond stretched smooth and still. "It's a beaver dam!" he exclaimed. "The first one I've ever seen." "Quabit," said Etienne. "Have red tail. Their beaver wigwam." He pointed to a heap of branches at one side, some of them new with green leaves still clinging. Matt stepped closer to look. Instantly, there was the crack of a rifle. A ring of water rippled the surface of the pond. Near its edge, a black head appeared for just a flash and vanished again in a sputter of bubbles. Etienne laughed at the way Matt had started. "Beaver make big noise with tail," he explained. "I thought somebody shot a gun," Matt said. "I wish I had my rifle now." Etienne scowled. "Not shoot," he warned. "Not white man, not Indian, young beaver not ready." He pointed to a tree nearby. "Sign of beaver," he said, "belong to family." Carved in the bark, Matt could make out crude figure of an animal that could, with some imagination, be a beaver. "Sign show beaver house belong to people of Beaver," Etienne explained. "By and by, when young beaver all grown, people of Beaver hunt here. No one hunt but people of Beaver." "You mean just from the mark on the tree, another hunter would not shoot here?" "That our way," Etienne said gravely. "All Indian understand." Would a white man understand? Matt wondered. He thought of Ben with his stolen rifle. It wasn't likely Ben would respect an Indian sign, but he must remember to warn his father. When it seemed the beaver did not intend to show itself again, the two boys climbed back up to the bank. At the row of stumps, Etienne halted and signaled for Matt to go ahead. "Show way to cabin," he ordered. All Matt's suspicions came running back. Did Etienne intend to sneak off behind his back and leave him to find his way home? "Is this some kind of trick?" he demanded hotly. Etienne looked stern. "Not trick," he said. "Matt need learn." To Matt's relief, he took the lead again. After a short distance, he stopped and pointed to a broken stick leaning in the direction of the creek. A little farther on, there was a small stone set against a larger stone. Not far away, a tuft of dried grass dangled from a branch of a small tree. Indian make sign, Etienne said. Always make sign to tell way. Matt must same. Not get lost in forest. Now Matt remembered how Etienne had paused every so often, sometimes to break a branch that hung in their path, once to nudge aside a stone with the toe of his moccasin. He had done these things so quickly that Matt paid no mind. He saw now that Etienne had carefully been leaving markers. Of course, he exclaimed, but my father always made blazes on trees with his knife. Etienne nodded. That white man's way. Indian maybe not want to show where he'd go, not want hunters to find beaver hunt. Ah, so these were secret signs. Nothing anyone following them would notice. It would take sharp eyes to find them, even if you knew they were there. Matt do same, Etienne repeated. Always make sign to show way back. Matt was ashamed of his suspicions. Etienne had only meant to help him. If only he didn't have to be so superior about it. He plodded along behind Etienne, trying to spot the signs before Etienne could point them out. All at once, a thought struck him. He almost laughed out loud. He remembered Robinson Crusoe and his man Friday. He and Etienne had sure enough turned that story right around about. Whenever they went a few steps from the cabin, it was the brown savage who strode ahead, leading the way, knowing just what to do and doing it carefully and skillfully. And Matt, a puny sort of Robinson Crusoe, tagged along behind, grateful for the smallest sign that he could do anything right. It wasn't that he wanted to be a master, and any idea of Etienne's being anyone's slave was not to be thought of. He just wished he could make Etienne think a little better of him. He wanted Etienne to look at him without a gleam of amusement in his eyes. He wished it were possible for him to win Etienne's respect. As though Etienne sensed that Matt was disgruntled, he stopped, whipped out his knife, and neatly sliced off 2 shining globes of dried sap from a nearby spruce. He grinned and held out one of them like a peace offering. Chaw, he ordered. He popped the other piece in his mouth and began to chew it with evident pleasure. Gingerly, Matt copied him. The glob fell to pieces between his teeth, filling his mouth with a bitter juice. He wanted to spit it out in disgust. But Etienne was plainly enjoying the stuff, so he stubbornly forced his jaws to keep moving. In a moment, the bits came together in a rubbery gum, and the first bitterness gave way to fresh piney taste. To his surprise, it was really good. The 2 boys tramped on, chewing companionably. Once more, Matt acknowledged to himself Etienne had taught him another secret of the forest. Chapter 12. I must have a bow, Matt decided one morning. He was envious of the bow Etienne had often carried behind his shoulder, and of the blunt arrows he tucked into his belt. Only the day before, Matt had watched him swing it suddenly into position and bring down a flying duck. Etienne had picked up the dead bird carefully and carried it away with him. No doubt the Indians would find some use for every scrap of bone and feather. Matt knew by now that Etienne never shot anything for the fun of it. With a bow and a little practice, Matt thought now, he might get a duck for himself. It would be a fine change from his usual fish. He had no doubt he could shoot with a bow. In fact, he made them years ago back in Quincy. He and his friends had played at being Indians, stalking each other through the woods and whooping out from behind trees, even if they had practiced half earnestly at shooting at a target. How could he have known that someday he would have needed such a skill? He got a straight branch, notched it at either end, and stretched tight a bit of string his father had left. Arrows he whittled out of slender twigs, but something was definitely wrong. His arrows wobbled off in odd directions, or flopped on the ground at his few feet away. He was chagrined the next morning when Etienne came out of the woods and surprised him in his practice. Etienne looked at the bow. "Not good wood," he said at once. "I get better." He was very exacting about the wood he chose. He searched along the edge of the clearing, testing saplings, bending slender branches, discarding one after another, till he found a dead branch of ash about the thickness of his 3 fingers. He cut a rod almost his own height and handed it to Matt. "Take off bark," he directed, and squatted down to watch while Matt scraped the branch clean. Then, taking it in his hands again, he marked off several inches in the center where Matt's hand would grip the bow. "Cut off wood here," he said, running his hands from the center to the ends. "Make small like this." He held up one slim finger. Matt set to work too hastily. "Slow," Etienne warned him. "Knife take off wood too fast. Indian use stone." Under the Indian's critical eye, Matt shaved down the branch, paring off the thinnest possible shavings. The slow work took all his patience. Twice he considered the task finished, but Etienne, running his hand along the curve of the bow, was not satisfied till it was smooth as animal bone. "Need fat now," he said. "Bear fat best." "Will this do?" Matt asked, bringing out a bowl of fish stew that he left cooling on the table. Carefully, with a bit of bark, Etienne skimmed the drops of oil that had risen to the surface. He rubbed the oil from one end of the bow to the other till the bare wood glistened. Matt's frayed bit of string he cast aside. Instead, he set about making bowstrings as he had made the snare of long strands of spruce root. This took most of the morning as he patiently twisted the strands together, rolling them against his thigh to make them even and smooth. Finally, he tied one end of the notch to his bow and began to slowly bend the wood. The bow seemed to Matt to be as stiff as iron. It seemed impossible that it would bend, but slowly it yielded, till the string slipped over the notch at the other end. The bow was finished. "It's a beauty," Matt told him, filled with admiration at their joint handiwork. Etienne gave a grunt of satisfaction. "Shoot pretty good," he said. "One day make better. Indian take long time. Leave wood many days till ready." Before he left, Etienne cut off 4 slender shoots of birchwood. "Best for arrow," he explained. Marking off with his hands the length of about 2 feet, he left Matt to do the whittling for himself. Matt was delighted with the bow, but shooting it was another matter. It was not in the least like the flimsy thing he'd first created. It took all his strength to draw the string back. When he released his arrow, it flew with astonishing power off somewhere into the underbrush, anywhere but where he aimed it. As fast as he could make new arrows, he lost them. But he was determined. He pegged a target of birch bark against a tree and shot at it grimly, his arrows coming closer and closer with every day's practice. The heel of his hand was blistered from the stinging snap of the string. Etienne did not offer him any further advice, but when the root string began to fray, he brought him one day a fine bowstring of twisted animal sinew, which would last for a long time. Using the new string, Matt could frequently nick the edge of his target. Soon, he promised himself, the squirrels would have more respect than to frisk so boldly about his head. And that is the end of chapters 11 and 12.